This Devar Torah, which centers around the Parsha of Toldos and the role of Yitzchak, is called Brachos and Bris, and the connection between blessings and the treaties that I'll be discussing should become clear as we go along. In chapter 26 of Bereshis in Parshas Toldos, Yitzchak is given a wide-ranging bracha from Hashem. So it says, "V'heyeh imcha," I will be with you. "Va'avarechecha," and I will bless you. "Ki lecha ulezaracha etain es kol ha'aratzos ha'el." For unto you and to your seed I will give all these countries. V'hakimosi es hashivua, and I will establish the oath. Asher nishbati le'Avraham avicha, that I swore unto Avraham your father. And then the next sentence it says, "V'hisparchu v'zaracha," and in your seed, kol goyei haaretz. And Hisbarchu v'zaraka kol goyei haaretz. In your seed will all the nations of the world be blessed. So the Ramban has a comment on Vahikimosi es hashvua. He says, first of all, the oath, the shvua that's talked about here, is interconnected with the promise that Yitzchak and his descendants will be given the land. The bracha is interconnected with the idea of giving the land to Yitzchak and his descendants. Secondly, the Ramban says, even if you think that making the oath once Avraham had the connection with Hashem, that the Avraham's role might have been enough, and they wouldn't have had the Torah wouldn't have had to provide an oath once again for Yitzchak and then again to Yaakov. But the Ramban says it's important for each of the avos to have a bris with God. And in this particular parsha, we're talking about the bris of Yitzchak in particular. And third, the Ramban says, with Yitzchak, his mission was to be a bracha bo'amim, like his father. That is to say, he was to be a blessing in the eyes of the peoples around him. And it's the third point that I particularly want to connect with my question. How can we reconcile this bracha ba'amim, the idea that Yitzchak is supposed to be a blessing for the people around him, with the hatred that the Plishtim express for Yitzchak in this very parsha? It seems like a contradiction. And we're going to use the commentary of the Ramban to explore it. And one of the things that the Ramban very interestingly does is to take the point of view of the non-Jews in the area, particularly Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim. And so we have an idea of how the Avos, and Yitzchak in particular, are dialoguing with the non-Jews in the neighborhood, in this situation. Dialogue is good, so the question is, what form does that dialogue take? So we have two instances in the Torah in which Avimelech, the king of the Plishtim, interacts with the Avos, one with Avraham and one with Yitzchak. It's not clear that it's the same Avimelech in both cases, although the king is named Avimelech in both instances. But the Ramban suggests that Avimelech, in the second case, knew about the first case, about the interaction between Avimelech and Avraham. Now, there are similarities in the two cases, which have been examined by many. Just to state them, in each case, Avraham and Yitzchak are going into the land of the Plishtim because of famine, because of the lack of food in Canaan. Secondly, each says his wife is his sister, and that provokes problems. And in each case, we end up with a treaty with the Plishtim, Avraham and Yitzchak. Now let's take these two cases separately, using the commentary of the Ramban as our guide. So in the first case, Avimelech is an ohev of Avraham. Avimelech in this particular case is doing honor to Avraham and obeying his will. He is a close friend, a highly respected, highly respecting Avraham for being an Ish HaElokim. He recognized that Avraham is the beneficiary of Elokim Imach, right? But the mystery is, Avimelech asks Avraham to swear against the possibility that as he says, Hine im tishkorli, if you deal falsely with me. The possibility is raised that Avraham will deal falsely with Avimelech. According to the Ramban, the word im expresses uncertainty about Avraham's intentions. Will Avraham reciprocate Avimelech's goodwill? Now the question might be raised, why should Avimelech have this uncertainty given his fondness, his respect for Avraham? Why should he worry about Avraham? So here, in this particular context, the Ramban says that Avimelech was a king and Avraham was a stranger in the land. Therefore, there was an unequal status to the two. They weren't equals, and that's why they needed a compact, says the Ramban in this case. We'll see that in this case, the Ramban actually refers to this first case in a somewhat different way. So in the first case, to sum up, Avimelech is an Ohev. He's a friend of Avraham. And we might wonder, well, why is he so worried about Avraham's intentions in this case? Why would he tell Avraham, you need to swear to me about your intentions? I don't completely trust you, even though I like you and admire you, right? In the second case, Avimelech and his followers hate Yitzchak, apparently because he was the richest person in the community. So they chase Yitzchak out of the community, and then they come back to him and make a compact with him. Now, the Abarbanel comments that when they come back to Yitzchak, after chasing him out, it's as though Yitzchak is the Adon. He's the master of the land. It seems that he has the superior position. So they give him a kavod at the end, but there's also a lot of fear of him. So in the second case, Avimelech tells Yitzchak, Im taseh imanu ra'ah, kasher lo nega anucha. If you do us harm, why we don't mean harm to you, we're going to reply in kind. We've done no harm to you, and we expect you to do no harm to us, right? We didn't take your money, and we let you go in peace, justifying their position. But the worry is that Yitzchak may make trouble in the form even of war with the Plishtim. Now the question is, well, if Avimelech is worried about that, and of course the hatred factor kicks in here. How do you prevent Yitzchak from making war? Right. So the idea is, well, naturally, consider the treaty that Avimelech made with Avraham earlier. So Avimelech might think, this is the Ramban speaking. If we reject the earlier treaty with Avraham, Yitzchak will also reject that treaty, and we chased him out. So he has reason to be provoked about us. And so the Ramban writes, Vayigarish Zaro es Zarenu min haaretz. He and his descendants will chase us out of the land. So the conclusion they have is, let's get a new treaty to reinforce the old one. And we'll condemn anyone who violates the treaty. And we need a treaty with Yitzchak in order to deal with the problem that Yitzchak could be a security issue for us. He could be actually in a stronger position than we are and triumph over us. So the implication here is, and this is what the Ramban says, they knew Avraham and his role in the War of the Kings. They saw his success and imagined that he could conquer the Philistine kingdom, right? Yitzchak was as strong as his father, so Avimelech worried that he might make war and chase Avimelech and his people out of the land as they had chased Yitzchak away. Now, in those days, it appears Avimelech, even though he was king, he didn't really have a large army to back him up. That Yitzchak might have actually been stronger than Avimelech. That's the fear. And it's very interesting here that in this second case, the Ramban says that Avimelech in the first case with Avraham had reason to be worried about Avraham's strength, because he knew that Avraham had been the difference in the War of the Kings, and had affected the result of that war. So why shouldn't Avraham be a factor therefore in the security position of Avimelech? So even though in the first case Avimelech was an ohev of Avraham, he still suspected him because of his great strength, his military reputation, and when you put that together with the fact that he was a man of God, so Avimelech had to be reason to be worried about him, even though he was an ohev, right? So we're talking here about Avimelech's position here, and he has reason to be worried about Avraham in the first case and Yitzchak in the second. So what can we say to conclude here? First of all, it's very interesting that this treaty, this bris, it has the effect of a norm to control power. The idea was to control the possibility that superior power could be used against someone. And the worry on the part of Avimelech is the superior power of Avraham and Yitzchak, which should surprise us. Nevertheless, the suspicion is controlled by an agreement between them to lessen the suspected danger of violence and war. Secondly, each side seems to exaggerate the power of the other. We don't read in the Torah that Yitzchak or Avraham, God forbid, had ever contemplated war against Avimelech. We don't know anything about that, but nevertheless, Avimelech, in each case, feared it. No matter what the attitude of Avimelech had to Avraham and Yitzchak, whether he was an admirer or not, he still worried, according to the Ramban, about the superior strength of Avraham and Yitzchak. It seems that very important here is that although there are secular motives, such as fear, and the fear may be well justified, as well as Torah motives, the whole idea of haaretz, the background, it says, Ramban says that Avimelech in the second case may very well have known about the promise of the haaretz to be given to Avraham and his descendants, right? And finally, Bracha and Bris contributes to protection. The idea is that the role of Avraham and Yitzchak needs to be protected. Bracha assures that God is concerned about protecting those avos, right? And the bris, as it works out, is really an implementation of that bracha in the sense that it assures that Avraham and Yitzchak will be protected from the power and the suspicion of Avimelech. Shabbat Shalom.